We are back with another custom campaign breakdown. This time, we're going to talk about one of my personal favorite custom maps, Questionable Ethics. This custom map is very unique when compared to the other campaigns I made a video on. This entire campaign takes place in a top secret research facility full of traps, challenges, and crescendo events. This campaign has a lot of clever ideas that are executed very well. Over the years, Questionable Ethics has become a full series of campaigns, including a remake and a sequel. For this breakdown, I will be going over the first Questionable Ethics map, since it's easily my favorite. So, without wasting any more time, let's break down the story behind Questionable Ethics. The campaign starts off with the survivors in a small room. You can find 4 dead bodies in the starting area, along with a camera in the corner of the spawn room. You can also find empty pill bottles in the corner of the room next to a dead body, and tally marks that add up to 17. After leaving the safe room, the survivors walk down a hallway and find a bunch of paintings. These paintings are found throughout the campaign, and if you knock it off the wall, you will be rewarded with a random item. Sometimes a special infected will spawn instead, so keep that in mind. Shortly after, the survivors get a better look at the facility. This is a good time to ask the obvious question: who is keeping the survivors here? Throughout the Questionable Ethics campaign, you can find these cameras almost everywhere. The hallways, the crescendo events, even the bathrooms have a camera. The survivors are being watched by somebody, we just don't know who. Here's what we do know. Whoever is running this facility has a lot of money and a lot of resources. This facility is huge, and it's full of traps and unique set pieces. You can also find this symbol on the wall. This is seen throughout the campaign, and it's one of the only clues we get as to who's running this place. There is a lot of mystery surrounding this facility. Why bring the survivors here? Why put them in a facility full of zombies and dangerous challenges? We obviously don't know the answers to these questions and likely never will. But if I had to guess, it's probably some kind of test or experiment, and a very twisted one at that. And as we come to find out, we are not the only survivors stuck in this facility. We'll get to that in due time. For now, we're going to move on. Shortly after, the survivors head deeper into the facility. This is another standout feature found in this campaign. While fighting through chapters 1 and 4, you can find weapons and supplies behind glass cases. You need gas cans to open them up. These gas cans are scattered throughout the campaign. You can use them to obtain better weapons or healing supplies. Questionable Ethics has a lot of innovative ideas, and this is one of the best features without a doubt. Now, let's move on. Shortly after, the survivors walk into a room with blue tiles. When you approach some of the tiles, they will turn into glass panels and break when you walk on them. This can be avoided with ease, but this will come back later in the campaign. After walking into the next room, the survivors find 9 numbers on a wall, and after getting a little closer, 4 numbers will be highlighted. These numbers are randomized every time you play, and this combination is needed to complete the campaign. But if you somehow forget the combination, you can use a gas can as an alternative, which is once again great level design. Shortly after, the survivors walk into a room. On the wall, you can find these glass tanks that are holding, well, tanks. At a first glance, you might think that they're dead, but they aren't. We'll talk more about this later. Shortly after, the survivors find their first event. A bridge is called after pressing a nearby button. The survivors then have to hold off the infected hordes. This is a standard holdout event that isn't very hard. Just be mindful of the nearby drop. A charger or jockey could send you right over. You can also use a gas can to spawn a mounted minigun, which makes things a little easier. After this, the survivors walk into another room. Dumpsters can be found near the stairs, which is very odd, until you head up towards the top and knock over this painting. After you do this, a tank will spawn. This can be difficult if you aren't prepared, and don't forget about the dumpsters I mentioned earlier. This room being small means the dumpsters are a lot more dangerous. After you kill the tank, a locked gate is opened. You then walk forward and find metal detectors. The blue tiles also make a return, and the safe room can be found on the far side of the room. This event is very hard, especially if you get knocked into one of the holes by a special infected. The tiles are also a lot harder to deal with since you're being attacked from every direction. Now let's head over to chapter 2. This is where we get a few more hints on the campaign's story. When you leave the safe room, you find yourself in a massive open area. 4 rooms can be found, and each has their own designated number above the door. If you look on the left-hand side, you'll notice that the door for room number 3 is wide open, and when you enter room 3, you find an empty safe room. Some supplies can be found, but it's nothing great. So, based on the evidence presented, we know that there's another crew of survivors stuck in this facility. Also, when you hop in the elevator and reach the top, if you look on the right-hand side, you'll see a hallway full of dead zombies. The survivors from room 3 took this exact same elevator, but went down a different hallway. Maybe we'll cross paths with them in future chapters. Shortly after, the survivors find another elevator, and during the ride you can find these pieces of wall graffiti. God is dead. None of you will survive. Fight. When you reach the top, the survivors find themselves surrounded by tanks. When you knock over the nearby photo, the screen will shake and 2 tanks will spawn. You are given an ample amount of supplies, but just like last time, the room has 2 dumpsters that can be used to instantly down you, so keep that in mind. After you kill the tanks, the nearby gate then opens. The survivors then head deeper into the facility. When you walk into this room, you can find a massive window on the ceiling, and when you walk a little further, the survivors find yet another challenge. You have to press a button to open a locked door. The problem is you have to walk through water, and giant pillars will be dropped from the ceiling and deal heavy damage. An adrenaline shot will make this segment a lot easier, but if played carelessly, this segment can destroy your health bar, so proceed with caution. Shortly after, the survivors climb a ladder and find themselves surrounded by red paintings. As you can probably guess by the bells on the wall, if you knock over these paintings, a horde is alerted. You don't even have to shove the painting, simply shooting it will summon a horde. Again, if you're careless, this segment can be very challenging, so just be mindful of where you shoot. After this, the survivors find a car dangling from the ceiling. When you walk towards it, the car then drops. This will come back in a few seconds. After leaving the room, the survivors walk across a massive pipe, and when you reach the other side, the survivors find yet another challenge. And this is hands down one of the best segments I have ever played in any custom campaign. When you walk into this room, you can see a 4-digit code on the wall. At the very end of the pipe, you can see a button. A safe room symbol can be seen with an arrow pointing down, but you can also find orange arrows pointing towards the ceiling, and when you look up, you can see why. 9 cars can be seen dangling from the ceiling, and after you press the button, pipes extend out of the nearby walls and you then have to drop down to the safe room. Here's the fun part. As you get closer to the safe room, the cars will drop one by one. You then have to fight off the infected while at the same time dodging cars that are falling from the ceiling. This segment is so fucking fun. I have never seen something like this in a custom map before. A charger, jockey, or smoker is bad enough when walking on pipes this narrow, but cars constantly dropping from the ceiling adds so much chaos to this segment. This is, in my opinion, the best part of this campaign, especially when playing with your friends. When you reach the bottom, the survivors punch in the code and head over to Chapter 3. When you walk out of the safe room, you walk into what I like to call the cargo room. You have to jump from container to reach the nearby ledge. A charger or jockey can very quickly end your run, and it should be noted that you might get a tank spawn here. If this happens, just run. You can also find these symbols on the side of the container. When you reach the next room, the survivors find their next challenge. 3 doors can be seen, and you have to pick the correct one. Picking the wrong door can lead to a surprise special infected or an endless pit. I would tell you the answer, but that takes the fun out of it. Shortly after, the survivors find yet another crescendo event. The blue tiles and ankle-high water make a return, and you have to push through the infected hordes to turn off the alarm. You move slower, and if you drop into one of the fake tiles, you are held in place for a few seconds. On harder difficulties, this can be very challenging, especially if you don't have the supplies. When you finish up the event, the survivors move forward and find zombies underneath a glass floor. After waiting for a few seconds, a laser then kills the zombies. The survivors then find a large yellow door. If you look on the left-hand side, you can find another yellow door with a "Do Not Enter" sign. And if you look on the wall, you can see the number 3. So, the survivors in room 3 made it all the way here. Not only did they make it this far, it looks like we're taking the same path that they did. When you walk through the yellow doors, you then have to dodge laser beams in a narrow hallway. This is a fun challenge with your friends, but in solo play, this segment can be very annoying since the AI wasn't programmed to dodge laser beams. This campaign is fantastic, but it clearly wasn't designed for solo players. It's not just this segment either. My AI teammates walking off the map and getting themselves killed happened more than once. Shortly after, the survivors walk through a gate and walk into this tunnel. When you try to climb the ladder, the gate closes. You then have to press the button behind the purple dumpster. When you do this, the room starts to spin, and 2 tanks will spawn. This room is not large, making the dumpster even more dangerous. The tanks spawn one at a time, which is a good balance choice, but this event can still be very challenging if you don't kill the tanks fast enough. When you finish off the tanks, the survivors find themselves in this big blue room. When the doors close, a pod protrudes from the ground, and when you walk inside, the doors close and you are scanned by something. When you walk out of the pod, your character is covered in a strange orange aura, and you then have to fight off the infected hordes. Here's the fun part. The pod gives you a strange but powerful ability. When the infected get close to you, they will be set on fire. It's basically a fire shield that helps out a lot with this event. When you clear out all the zombies, you once again have to kill 2 tanks. You are given an ample amount of supplies before the event, just like last time, but this is still incredibly challenging. The fire buff will still work on the tanks, so keep that in mind. You also have a Midnight Rider song playing in the background, which is a nice bonus. When you finish up the event, the survivors find a massive room with 4 bridges. Each of them are numbered, just like the rooms found in Chapter 2. Here's a neat detail. When you look at bridge number 3, you'll notice that the safe room door is wide open. The doors to bridges 1 and 2, however, are still closed. So, the survivors in room 3 made it all the way to the finale. Speaking of the finale, let's head over to Chapter 4. When you leave the safe room, you find a full armory of guns and ammo. You can also find another 4-digit code above the elevator. If you head into NoClip and head towards the far left of the hallway, you can also find the campaign's official credits. The survivors then take the elevator to their final test. The survivors arrive in a large room that's partially flooded, once again slowing your movement speed. When you walk to the center of the room, you can find the dead body of Lewis face down in the water. If you look to the left of the room, you can find the dead body of Francis against the wall. And if you look forward, you can find Zoe's dead body by the exit. Based on the evidence presented, we can safely assume the following. The Left 4 Dead 1 survivors were the survivors in room 3. They've been fighting through this facility just like us, and they made it all the way to the final test, but they sadly didn't survive. It should also be noted that Bill's body is nowhere to be found. This could mean one of two things. Either A, this campaign takes place after the events of the sacrifice, or B, Bill simply died before he reached the final test. Regardless of the reason, I think it's still worth pointing out. The survivors then press a button and have to hold off the infected hordes until the door opens. Now let's talk about this finale from a gameplay perspective. It's pretty hard. The water slows your movement speed, but the stone slabs can be walked on to make your job a little easier. There is a problem though. Every 30 seconds, pillars will drop from the ceiling and potentially crush you. They still do a lot of damage, and you are fighting zombies the entire time, which makes it a lot harder. Also, you have to kill 2 tanks, which is standard for a finale, but the area being flooded means Molotovs are basically ineffective. With good positioning and smart decision making, you can survive this part of the finale just fine, but on harder difficulty settings, this can pose a very difficult challenge. When you kill the second tank, the door opens, but the finale is not yet over. After walking down the hallway, you have to fight through the disappearing blue tiles yet again. And when you get past that, you have to once again jump down a bunch of pipes while dodging falling cars. This time, however, the infected will be swarming you the whole way. There are a lot of challenges in this campaign. The falling cars, the blue tiles, the combinations, just to name a few. In this finale, almost every challenge is thrown at you here, and if you're careless, you will die very quickly. With that said, this finale is still a lot of fun, especially with your friends. When you dodge all the cars and reach the bottom of the pipe, you find yet another combination door. Remember the code above the elevator at the start of the chapter? You're going to need it to complete the finale. When you open up the door, you can see an exit dead ahead, but as you approach the door, it closes. 4 rooms can be seen. All of them are locked except one. If you look on the right hand side, you can see an arrow pointing towards the safe room. And when you head inside, the survivors find themselves in a room that is identical to the starting area back in Chapter 1. The door begins to close, and the survivors will then shout out in frustration, knowing that their test is not yet over. And that concludes the story behind Questionable Ethics. This campaign is one of my personal favorites. The level design is incredibly unique, and it poses a challenge without going overboard with the difficulty. I love the challenges, and the crescendo events were a lot of fun. This campaign is fantastic, and you should definitely give it a shot if you haven't already. So, if I did miss anything, or if you guys have anything to add, be sure to let me know down below. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next one.